Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, just checking in with everybody. Yeah, we had a great time in Vegas. I'm not sure what Gregory covered because I just got on the call, but I thought Daniel gave his best speech ever. There was a lot of good buzz based on what he said, and he was completely mobbed by people at the end of the talk, and surprisingly, a lot of support, even though he got up there and basically said, it's time to rethink Bitcoin, or it's time to either pivot or die or sell or go to the next thing. So he was kind of controversial in a way, but most people at the conference were pretty supportive. So I thought that was good, and did quite a few interviews with some different blogs and video interviews that'll be coming out shortly. And there wasn't a lot of people at this event. It wasn't as highly attended as what they anticipated, maybe because of Bitcoin's price being so low. But nonetheless, we met with a lot of new contacts and some of our old ones as well, especially merchant processors who we've been talking to about getting BitUSD up and running. And we had a really good connection with a lot of people while we were there. It's great.
Okay.
Yeah, that shocked me too. Just the amount of people there. I go to Bitcoin conferences every 6 months or so, and every one had about double the number of people there the previous one until this one, which had half the number of people that were in Miami.
So this was a smaller Bitcoin conference, huh?
Definitely a lot less people.
They said they had 800 registered, but there was no way there was 800 there.
I wouldn't think so.
So did you guys go drinking together? Oh, sorry. Wild Wex said something.
When I spoke with, I think his name is Stuart, who oversees the event, he said they had about 700 registered people. But the layout of the event was quite different than last year. Last year you had the left side of a very wide hallway with one or two rooms, and the right side with the sponsorship booths. At this event, it was at a different hotel, and it was a very long, squirrely hallway of a couple of rooms and a larger room, and then on the other side of that room, some sponsor booth. So it was quite an interesting layout.
Yeah, and what was also interesting is that a lot of the talks, kind of sparsely attended. But other than Patrick Byrne's talk, I think Dan had the most people in the room to hear him speak, and a lot of the vendors at this event were miners. The vast majority of the people that were on the showroom floor were actually mining companies. So it was kind of surprising that nobody there's one guy in particular that had some questions about BitUSD and how it works, but for the most part it was very supportive. And the whole entire talk, Dan's talk, should be up here shortly for everybody to watch. But I just thought it was great.
Yeah, it's hard to ask questions because we don't know what the talk was about. But so you think the community opinion is shifting towards BitShares more now? We were talking about it earlier, that maybe because the proof of work Bitcoin community wasn't that receptive of BitShares, that it might also be one of the reasons why it's a lot less, seems to be a lot more independent from Bitcoin than other altcoin projects.
Due to some technical difficulties, we have clipped a small portion of the raw content from this audio. Thank you for your patience, and we will continue to strive to give you the best content possible. Happy podcasting. Let's continue.
Tenders. Do you kind of feel like that's how BitUSD and BitShares is taken? That's kind of how I see it, but does it seem like they were...
Well, possibly. I don't see it like we're the underdog. I just see it like we're not understood yet, and there's still a lot of infrastructure and network effect and support for Bitcoin, and there's kind of then there's the BitShares camp. So I think that what's going to drive this change is kind of what Daniel says. It's going to be the free market. It's going to be people moving their their resources into somewhere that pays interest, into somewhere that's faster, that's, more decentralized. Just going to be a matter of time before the market kind of votes with its feet and with its dollars, So, so I don't know. I don't know that so much that. I think it's just that, Bitcoin is this, juggernaut of technology that's out there, and everybody's kind of rallying behind it and what it means. But Daniel's talk was kind of, hey, Bitcoin isn't about currency. Bitcoin is about all these other things. It's about freedom and transparency and all the ideals that are behind Bitcoin could be realized with a better technology.
So kind of like bringing us back to the moment when Satoshi said this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the speech is, he said that several times in his talk. He said, realizing the ideals of Satoshi can be done with BitShares. It can be done with, what we're trying to do with bit assets, that kind of thing. And that Bitcoin is kind of strayed away from what it was designed to be, which is what I've always said in the interviews. I'm like, hey, the premise that it was based on is 5 years old, and it's changed. The very nature of it's changed because of mining pools and technology and mining itself. And Dan basically, somebody asked Dan, they said, well, how do you know DPoS is the best thing? How do you know something better is not going to come along? And Daniel's response was, I'm not, married to any particular technology. I'm about, going for whatever the free markets decide and the best one. And the problem with Bitcoin is you can't pivot. It's stuck in mining, it'll always be stuck in mining, and at least my opinion. And they don't have the ability to pivot into something that's more profitable and faster and, just better.
Or at least they can't do it in an agile way. Like it's very difficult to find consensus on any real change that you're going to have,
Well, to be honest, they can now that there's so little mining, so little people owning the entire mining scene.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the powers that be, or the miners and the mining companies and the mining pools, and they're not just going to allow that to happen without a fight, because they've got, all these resources invested. Imagine all these different mining farms that have sprung up over the last couple of years. They got to get a return on their money. They got to make their money back on their investment. So, I'm sure it's very difficult now with the price of Bitcoin. I was walking around the conference, the exhibit hall, and I went up to a couple of miners and I said, how much does your mining machine cost? And they would give me different prices, and I'd say, great, what's the ROI? How long does it take to pay it off? And every one of them was kind of avoiding the question, because at $300 or under $300, I think Bitcoin went under 300 at the event, they don't have an answer to that, because it's just, you don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah. So they kind of just looked at you like, about that. We really probably should change the subject.
Yeah, well, they just kind of said, well, it changes all the time with the price of Bitcoin and da-da-da. They wouldn't really answer the question, but it was, it's kind of a moving target. I've talked to, when I first got involved, when I first met Dan about a year ago in Vegas, I was actually looking to buy a mining. I was going to buy one of those big Neptunes or Jupiters, whatever the newest one was from KNC Miner. Yeah. And then I just looked at it, and Dan was talking to me about it. He's like, you'd be better off just buying Bitcoin if you believe in it. But honestly, it's kind of like being on a treadmill that goes faster and faster all the time, and you can never get off the treadmill. And you're lucky to kind of get ahead of it. And that's, so I'm glad I didn't make that move, early on.
So you
just wait till the reward halves. And my theory is that once the reward halves and the big guys get out of the game because they can't make money, all the Bitcoin fans in the world won't be able to produce a block for years.
Yeah, and the other thing that nobody's talking about at all, I don't know why nobody's talking about this, but I talk about it every time I'm interviewed about BitShares, is Bitcoin is the least green technology in the world. I mean, I can't think of anything that's more wasteful than doing computational power for an algorithm to somehow secure a network that isn't really necessary anymore. It's an enormous waste of resources, and and so our industry is not green in that sense. So, we could start promoting BitShares as a green alternative, and that's something a lot of people talk about these days.
Yeah, about the mining difficulty, to be honest, if there are already mechanics in the place in the altcoins because of the multi-pool killing them, they have this gravity pool difficulty adjustment, so there are solutions to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So
to be fair to Bitcoin, but that still remains that it's a wasteful way of doing security. And as Dan Bytemaster already told, if it's just to keep these 8 or 10 mining pools up and running, you can do it a much safer and less resource-hungry way.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Well, I think the message is getting out there. Some people might disagree with Dan or not like what he has to say, but very few people can argue with him and argue with the logic. And and I keep saying, that every time there's a new technology and you have somebody that is the first to that technology, they never remain the leader. There's always something that comes from behind and surpasses it. And there's always a time where it looks like, like I was making fun of AOL. It used to be not so funny. People actually thought AOL would take over the world. AOL was too big. And then there was a time where, people felt that way about Microsoft. Microsoft would never be surpassed by anybody. It's just, there's no way you could ever knock them out of their perch, or even IBM before them. And so every time that happens, same thing with Bitcoin. People see Bitcoin, they say it's 5-6 billion. I don't know what it's 4 billion now, but whatever it's at now, they look at it and say there's no way anything's going to surpass that. And in the grand scheme of things, 4 or 5, 6 billion is nothing in the financial system, with trillions of dollars sloshing around. So I look at it like there absolutely will be something to surpass Bitcoin in a major way, and I don't see anything that has more potential than BitShares.
So, out of curiosity, if you don't mind me asking, what was kind of like, we've got a post, we received a post from Dan regarding the Patrick Byrne decision. Does anybody have any thoughts on counterparty? And because I read something where somebody said, I think it was Tochelon from Bit Sapphire said something to the effect of, he was concerned about if they started using open transactions and oracles or something like that and found a way to actually make trading faster than BitShares. And that was something that was interesting.
Yeah, well, I can only comment on my opinion on it. I do remember Dan talking about it briefly. We were sitting there and we got the news just before he got up there to make his announcement. A guy that I know at the conference leaned over to me and he said that he's about to announce the partnership. And early on, he contacted us and talked to BitShares and talked to Ethereum and all the different options. And I got to applaud Dan, because even though I think it is an opportunity for Counterparty, I don't think it's as important as focusing on getting BitShares X done and getting these bit assets, traded on major volume and the kind of things that Dan basically said, look, this is our priority. If we were to go the route that Counterparty did, they essentially are going to be owned by Overstock. I mean, Overstock's it's their paycheck. They're opening up the paycheck. So I guarantee you that they call the shots, and it's more like Counterparty is their client, because they're funding the whole thing. And I would hate to see us encumbered by somebody opening up their checkbook that we have to kind of answer to and develop things for. And so I think that's why Daniel early on didn't kind of push for that really hard. He kind of just said, we'll look at that in time. But I think that he's being really focused right now about focusing on the most important things first and getting them working and getting them improved. And we got a lot more work to do. We got to update this GUI and get it up to the next level. And we've got a lot of ideas on how to do that. And we've got to start getting more adoption and more people coming in the door. And that's part of my job. So these things I think are important. And the fact that we're fully decentralized and it's already up and running and we're so far ahead of anybody, I think that we have a good chance. I don't know. It doesn't really concern me too much. I'm happy for Counterparty, but I'm not particularly concerned because they're not trying to do the same thing as us.
Well, there were a lot of people who said there were some really good aspects about it. Dan was one of them. Stan was one of them. And it did make a good point. They're going to do a lot of the legal lifting. If you think about it, that's going to benefit the entire industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And and another thing that Dan said, I never heard him say before in his talk, he said there's room in the Bitcoin industry to have a MasterCard to the Visa, so to speak, and that BitShares, bit assets might be like the MasterCard to Visa, and that there's plenty of room for another major system in there. And I kind of feel the same way. I don't know that. I mean, the vast majority of Americans and people in the world don't care and are not involved in crypto. But as they start growing, as more people start getting involved, and the barriers to entry lower, then there's going to be plenty of room for more than 1 or 2 or 3 players, I think.
One of the comments that Toast and I were talking about it after the announcement, and his opinion was he wasn't really sure how good this was for Counterparty because of what you said. They're basically owned now by Overstock, but Overstock, they said they're going with Counterparty, but the first thing they did was they're creating the O coin. They've created a whole department within Overstock to do this. They're funding it. They hired two of the head developers of Counterparty to go in, to work for Overstock. And so, if they had gone with BitShares, the feeling was that, it's not so much that we would have lost our head developers. It was that Patrick knew that Dan wouldn't abandon BitShares or the Bit assets. And so it wasn't a suitable fit for BitShare, or so it wasn't a suitable fit for Overstock, basically because Dan couldn't be bought.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, you gotta understand. When I first met Dan in Vegas, I saw people offering him large sums of money, and people don't believe that. I mean, I think I posted on the forum one time that I saw people offering him millions of dollars, and that was exactly what happened. And he basically told everybody, you got to go through the same process. You got to invest into angel shares. That's the only way I'm going to accept funds to get this thing kicked off, so that it's an opportunity that anybody at any level can get involved in with the angel shares. And I just kind of respected Daniel tremendously because I saw people saying, look, I'll give you $2 million right now for this percentage of your idea or your company or whatever. And he was like, no, not interested. So it's a different approach. And I think it's a much better approach. I mean, it's, look at our community. We got the biggest community outside of Bitcoin Talk. We got I think the most active forum. I mean, I think we're leaps and, ahead of all the other, 2.0 as far as our community.
Consider this as well. What if BitShares was selected and you heard on the airwaves Daniel Larimer is now going to be working for Overstock and two other devs, and they're relocating to Utah? What would happen with BitShares? How would that work? Because ultimately it's not just incorporating Counterparty. They're trying to create a Wall Street on the blockchain. And again, it's not just the concept of what Counterparty is today. Patrick wants to do something beyond that. So just keep that in mind. If the tables were turned and Daniel and two devs were leaving the Virginia offices there, moving to Utah, how would that segment the community, and how would the community take that? Ultimately, this is a good move for Bitcoin and the crypto community overall, because what they're going to be establishing also, and what was said a number of times, is they're going to try to make some regulatory inroads and try to get some things established that are very costly. So this is beyond good for us.
Are you able to speak to it all? There's I saw something posted today about FinCEN wanting like blacklists in Gentoo and talking about sort of crypto unfriendly regulations regarding crowdfunding and whether angel shares is going to fall into that. Have you heard about that at all, or can you speak to that at all?
I have not, but I'll look into it.
Okay, there's quite a spirited thread about it on the forum. I could probably post the link in here.
Post the link in here. I'd like to see it.
Well, we can talk about a bit more. It's about the first reaction by the powers that be. So it's an ongoing discussion about what will happen if crypto really takes off and gets out of this very tiny market. So I posted a video earlier by Rick Valfinger about historic similarities when something like this was invented. Say, for example, the printing press. The printing press got the word out to the people, and that made cause a war between the Protestants and the Catholics for several hundred years. So is crypto bigger or smaller than the printing press? And are the BitShares team prepared for a battle like that?
Well, and then another question that comes to mind, and this is the one thing that really concerns me, and I won't lie. When I heard about the Patrick Byrne decision, and I don't know like where Overstock stands on this, but it is, business's war to a degree, like Eagle Eye always says, and some people disagree.
in cryptosphere that this is the case, but I don't. Do you see any potential for Overstock helping to get legislation written that will actually hinder BitShares from being, BitShares or other potential competition?
Yeah, I don't see that. To me, I made a post to the thread later on where I described my point of view, but it seems like everyone's confusing, not properly distinguishing between everything. There's three parts to this. First off is the O coin that everyone talks about. That's not a new coin. That's not anything. All that is, and they mentioned this in the conferences, that's when you buy a share of Overstock.com, you can tell your broker, I want a stock certificate, and they'll ship you the stock certificate. You'll be able to take that stock certificate and convert that directly into the O coin, and that's how it'll still be the same share of Overstock.com. So that's one thing. Then the second thing is the currency that runs on top of, which is going to be the new counterparty stuff. But again, that's not what everyone thinks, that Patrick Byrne's is going to buy that, take it, make it closed source and everything, but I don't think that's at all what he's going to do. What Patrick Byrne, I think, wants to do is go to the third level and be the exchange, the US dollar, the legalized US dollar on and off ramp to that. He's not going to change counterpoint stock. He's just going to use that for technology to make the first version of O-Stock, and then that'll be what the company's going to own the on and off ramp road to that, and that'll be completely compatible with what we do because our stuff will plug and play with all of that.
Gives a new meaning to Overstock.
Yeah, that was pretty clear. And even they cleared it up on the counterparty forums as well, that was part of the plan. Or not what Overstock's plan, but that counterparty would not be dissolved because of this. But still, the thing remains about this legal question in the future. Does everybody think things will keep going like this?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of going into unknown territory. You kind of mentioned the printing press, and I always mention the internet because, I have a lot of people that are kind of beginners that talk to me about this industry, trying to understand it and what we're doing. And I always say that, the internet was, the first time where information became decentralized. And with the crypto world, a lot of other industries are becoming, areas are becoming decentralized. So, kind of like in the early days of the internet, everybody's kind of wondering who's going to have the biggest market share or whatever. But it's always constantly evolving. The players today are going to change another 5 years and be new players in the internet space. So, there's I think you're right about getting outside the tiny little industry that we're in. We have to see the average person want to be involved in some way. It's got to be incentivized. I think that's why Daniel believes everything has to have a economic reason to exist, because without economic incentives, why would people want to do anything? And so as we build these economic incentives in there, like, hey, earn interest on your money, not just privacy, not just transparency, but earn interest and things that are incentivizing people to do a certain thing, then hopefully we can start seeing more money flow into these systems. And that's going to take some time, but I think I want to see the barrier to entry lowered, so it's just easier and easier for people to get involved, and especially with us, without ever having heard of Bitcoin.
So to that end, with getting people involved, I think it was Lucky Bit that posted up on the forum about a company called Bitwage, and it's the other side of the on-ramp that allows people to get paid in crypto. Have you heard of them at all? I think Ziok just posted a link to it in the chat.
Yeah, actually, I believe if I remember correctly, Bitwage was at the LA job fair when we were there.
Yes, that is correct. They're only a few months old, but they are actively being used by Dan Roseman at Coinality.
Yeah, so we've talked to them. The thing about the industry is that we meet so many different companies that are all trying to do big things, and a lot of them have no real track record. They're brand new, or they're in development, or they're 2 months away, or they have very few transactions so far. So they're all trying to do kind of similar things, or what would seem like big things, but it's a matter of who can really execute and who's really going to be able to do what they claim they can do. It's like the whole credit card thing. There's been so many companies trying to get a Bitcoin credit card set up, or crypto altcoins directly to a credit card, and very few have been able to actually get anywhere with that. So so we're looking at all those different options, but I think that for the number one thing I want to see on the marketing side is the number of users of BitShares X and bit assets increasing, because that's going to increase the market cap and the overall value of the system, because the average person is going to put in X dollars, whatever that is. Some might put in $5, some might put in 5,000, but it averages out that each person puts in more value into the system. So that's kind of the goal of what we're trying to do over the next couple months.
So you're looking for critical mass?
Yeah, we're looking at critical mass, and we're looking to reach people that are not in any way involved in crypto, Bitcoin or otherwise, because I think it's a lot easier to get people interested in something that could be the next big thing, or is new technology, or is something exciting that they could get involved in, over trying to go and convert somebody from another camp or from another tribe or somebody that believes in something else like Bitcoin. So even though I talk about Bitcoin, all the negatives and all the benefits of us, I'm not really trying to necessarily convert everybody over. I'm actually looking to go outside of our industry, outside of our space, and get beyond the early adopters.
I talked to Stan a bit about that at the conference, and that this space is so huge, that we don't have to be all things to all people. And a lot of the arguments about the minutia of how things work on the forum, it's the market is just so huge. It doesn't have to appeal to everybody. It only has to appeal to like 2 or 3% of them for it to be a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, think about it for a second. There is no industry larger than the currency market. The currency market dwarfs the stock market. If you look at the amount of transactions, we're talking trillions per day. I mean, it's absolutely the most enormous, I don't want to call it an industry. I don't know what to call it, but there's nothing with more value in the system than the currency and financial markets. And that's the market that we're playing in. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if we were to even get 1% of the world's transactions going, through crypto, let alone BitShares, which we don't have anywhere near that, it would be an enormous amount of value and a more enormous number of transactions. And that's the thing. I mean, it's 5-6 billion is just, sounds like a lot of money, but it's just not. I mean, there's people worth that today.
Yeah, Putin will laugh at 6 billion.
People make more in 1 year, individually.
Yeah, agreed. And you're not even a big bank. If you're 5 or 6 billion, you're not even a big bank. I mean, there are ginormous banks these days that that are too big to fail, so to speak. But these big banks, and that doesn't include all the actual currency trading that goes on between different currencies around the world every day. And I can't remember what the facts were, but I used to be into currency trading back in the day, and it was something like 100 times the New York Stock Exchange is traded every single day in currency. And that's kind of, we're not in actual currency, but we're kind of tapping into that side market, I mean, essentially cryptocurrency, and what Dan says is BitUSD is the first currency, which is kind of a pretty ballsy thing to claim, but it's true when you think about it.
One of the things I always take comfort in is, you go to a new city, and maybe the same country, different country, and you see like these massive buildings, and the big logo on the building is something you have no idea what they do, and you just kind of realize that here's a business making billions of dollars, and I've never even heard of them, and it's the same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a market cap of 6 billion, which is minuscule in the bigger scheme of things, and even though they're the big bear in the room, most of the people you talk to have absolutely no idea what it is.
Yeah, that's one of the big issues I see as well. I come from the military, so some of you may know that, but the military, they have this law that any big change in the entire organization will take at least 30 years. So I didn't know, so I asked where does this 30 years come from? Well, that's how long it takes for the old generation to move on. And we have a similar cultural change that's in mindset we need to go through as well before we can get this this new decentralized culture actually off the ground. Probably.
Well, the one thing the reason why I was interested in doing something that we ended up calling Beyond Bitcoin and having this Mumble server essentially is because eventually I wanted to, I'm not gonna lie, like I was just gonna try to get it started, and maybe someday BitShares would take it and create their own decentralized conferences. I think that conferences are probably
personally one of the best ways to kind of like corral the decentralized movement to a degree and kind of get them all thinking about the same types of concepts and try to get relationships formed that will actually help to push us forward with respect to that stuff. So I'll use this as an opportunity to let everybody know you can use this service as your own, or you can create your own Mumble server or do whatever you want to do, your own Hangouts under the Beyond Bitcoin umbrella. Beyond Bitcoin is intended to be more of a movement as opposed to like a brand. That's the intention, because all of you guys, everybody I've met in BitShares and are some of the smartest people I've ever met in real life. So I think that all of you guys are really capable of bringing a lot to the table, and you obviously show that when you come here and ask your intelligent, well thought out questions, and sometimes, you know, provide us with a lot of humor. But just so you guys know, it's there for you.
That's great. Well, hey, we're here to help in any way we can to expand the listener base to this show, or whatever you want to call it, you know, Beyond Bitcoin, because I'd love to see hundreds and thousands of people on this one day. That'd be great.
Well, Brian, that's actually a good point. Do you mind if I bring up a point that you brought up to me on the forums via PM the other day?
No, go for it. I mean, it's not really my idea. It was Michael's idea, but go for it. I think it's excellent.
There's a guy named Murderistic on the forums, and he essentially brought it up to Brian that it might be better to bring Hangouts over to Google Hangouts. I'm kind of split between the two. I like the idea of Google Hangouts. I tried it in the beginning. It seemed very difficult to get people on. It seemed easier somehow to get people on Mumble. But that's kind of one thing one reason why I really started this thing up was because it seemed like it was the Google Hangout thing just didn't really seem to grab a lot of attention. However, it was early on, so it's nice to reassess these things. And it's not necessarily saying that we have to have, you know, Google Hangouts all the time or anything like that, but if anybody's interested in doing something like running something like that under the Beyond Bitcoin type of umbrella, like for that movement, you know, looking beyond Bitcoin and how the blockchain can actually, like how we can all form like Voltron with all these different blockchains to create something that's absolutely magnificent. If you want to do that and help along with that, please let me know too.
But there's an issue maybe with if there are a lot of people and they want to ask questions. Well, not that a lot of people are asking questions now, but there's a lot of lag and you can't have that many people on at the same time.
So, well, and there were some issues with it, right? If there's somebody who's really interested in picking up that torch and taking it, I wouldn't mind doing it. The only issue is I would like it to be I would prefer it to be something where it's more of a decentralized thing. You know,
the Hangout thing needs more coordination than what we're doing now. That's for sure.
Well, the idea was not so much decentralizing it or whatever. The idea was just that it's way better for SEO and for getting more traffic to be on the Google Hangout. So that's why he was suggesting that, because once it's over there, he can start kind of pumping it and getting a lot more people to notice it. I mean, we're looking at all of our content right now, trying to figure out how to optimize it. And he said that I guess Mumble is just something you can't optimize.
Yeah, also one of the reasons why we didn't do it is getting people to even talk on the Mumble was hard enough, but having their faces on might be even harder.
That's actually the biggest psychological barrier that I found. That's why I chose Mumble. That was literally, that was the primary point that made me choose Mumble, was because people could come on, be faceless, could name themselves whatever they want, ask the questions that they want without having anybody look on them, badly, because the current structure, infrastructure for Bitcoin media is much different. And I'm not saying that there isn't a need for that way of going about doing things, but it's interesting. I'm sitting here looking at probably over 30 people, all poised to ask questions or give their voice, lift their voice to people if there's a problem they feel is being ignored.
Yeah.
But one thing Hangout has gotten better. They got perfect tools. They do have some good moderation tools now. Okay.
They have some good moderation tools, you say, Phoenix?
I mean, as far as moderating like questions, people can post questions directly to the host, and that way, not all over, or you can have people upvote questions, so you just the ones to right to the top. Then you just check them off after answer.
Well, I'll tell you guys right now. I'll take this. I will look at this from the perspective of how Dan does, which is essentially, don't ask me for permission to do it. Just do it if you want to do it, and let me know. Like, let's if people are interested in doing it, let me know if they don't want to do it, and we can try to figure something out if no one else steps up. But
MCAT just said that people in China are not allowed to use Google products.
Oh, okay. That's a big deal.
Killer criterion.
That makes sense.
Speaking of people in China, I told that there's a developer of a DAC. His name is Zhangwis, Zhangwis. He's developing just dice style DAC, JDS, and he's in round 2 or 3 of his dry runs, and he's looking for testers. So if you're on the forum, just search for Just Dice and have a look at his threads.
Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about it while we're on here? I mean, this is a really good forum to let people know about the devs who are trying to build onto our ecosystem. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think it hasn't gotten a lot of attention because he's I believe a third-party developer. He's not related to Daxon, all like Daxon is. But the idea is that it's using the BitShares X client. But he has custom screens for the dice games, and I've looked into a little bit. Some of the people I met in Vegas with i3 are pretty excited about it. They think it's going to be they think it's going to be a cash cow, just because it's being developed on the BitShares X platform, and the Chinese community seems very excited about it. But I think because it's mostly discussed in the Chinese community, it's not getting a lot of airplay in the general forum. But I don't think there's anything super complex or different about it than a traditional dice game. It's the same as BTSX in the sense that it has an exchange and it has a currency for the exchange called JDS and JDST right now on the testnet, and it. You place bets and it's got a market. It's got a ledger of the previous bets and odds, and it's got the number spinner thingies like in Vegas. And I haven't played too much with it, but from what I've seen and what I've read on his thread, he seems to be getting some good support for it in China.
We all have inside information, essentially. It's not necessarily inside information. It's information that's available to people, but they're just not aware of, because there's so much information to go through to get to all this stuff, right? So this is a really good place. Like, if you guys know of any projects that are really making you that you're really pumped up about, and you want to drive people to come here, one of the best ways to do it is to actually give information that will help the people who are attending or listening. And that's also another way to prove that we're trustworthy people, which is what we want to do, right? Like, we want to follow in the footsteps of a guy named Dan Larimer who didn't accept millions of dollars to give away his project and cared enough about his project and the people who were investing in it to actually turn all those things down, right? So Just Dice is something that maybe we can would you want to try to reach out, or could we get some people reaching out telling them, hey, get on here, let's talk about it?
Well, he's on the forum, and he's got a couple of threads, and I asked him if he was at a point where he wants testers. I could mention it on Mumble, and he seemed agreeable to that. But I think it'd be worth posting up in his thread and asking him about it, and engaging him and seeing if he wants to come talk about it. I don't know what his his English seems very good. I don't. With Zhang Weiss, I assume he's Chinese. I'm just guessing. Maybe he's not. But yeah, we can engage him and see if he wants to come talk to us.
Sounds good. And just a reminder to you guys that Cine is doing their snapshot for, he's planning on doing a BitShares X clone to a degree, but I want to bring him on here and have you guys kind of think about, let's think about ways that we can help him distinguish that from BitShares X, so it's not necessarily a direct competitor. It's doing something that's that we all need, that will kind of drive demand for both. Yes, he's snapshotting PTS AGS. So that's something to think about. And I plan on bringing him on, and if anybody wants a tip in it, let me know. I bought some. I'll gladly tip you some, so you have some, since you're attending and helping out here. And then we can get back into it. Ginger, are you talking about Cine's? He was wanting to do something called Time Bank, which actually would have pretty much taken up the role of BitShares Me to a large degree. The only difference would have been that he wanted the units to be in the units of measurements, like as in like kind of like notes would have been like time, for instance. Like he would have actually had like, I don't know exactly what unit he would have used, but time would have been the primary unit, some unit of time, maybe an hour or something like that. And then essentially different people, based on their skills and their reputation, might require more hours per hour to hire them on. Maybe like a decentralized Angie's List is how I was thinking about it, but I don't know because he's not here and I don't want to put words in his mouth. But there's something to think about, because Dan always said, that the community, the value of the community was what was going to drive PTS and AGS honoring. So it would be interesting to, what I'm hoping, and this is what Mumble's for, is to get people who are really interested in all this stuff, like all of you guys are. Let's bring our minds together to try to work on finding solutions that are valuable for these people.
Yeah. By the way, the Google Hangout thing, I looked around a bit just to come back at you and even talked about. I think we can do all that stuff at the same time in the single. So maybe have the Mumble session be the central part where everybody connects, and then we can say we're going to start the Hangout now, because the Hangout needs to be started at the same time. You can't just wait around for a couple of hours for everybody to join.
That's actually maybe a good idea, Joe.
And even have the IRC client and one of the guy leading the conversation. You might actually put up the IRC channel in the Mumble chat and put up a big warning in the Mumble client, noticing everybody that is being sent out over YouTube. And then you can have IRC, Mumble, and the Google Hangout at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I've got a couple people who are running delegates who want to, one person who wants to support us and actually be our Beyond Bitcoin delegate. I'm going to run a couple delegates. I'm going to try to run one for BitShares X, but it seems like it might be a little bit too technical for me with all the price feeds and stuff. I'm running my my DNS one, and we're going to have funding. So if anybody wants to start like helping out, and the one reason that they just couldn't really see themselves getting into it was because they didn't see themselves making any potential money. Here it's going to start building up to the point where we will be able to start paying people who are helping out as our correspondents and stuff. So I'm hoping people will kind of jump on with us and start working. Nick Coate, Pizpie, who's in here, he's actually working with NHZ a lot, and NHZ is essentially an ethical clone of NXT that kind of had some, if it's fair to say, some early dev problems, but there's kind of a new team who's stepping in, who's trying to build stuff into it. Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. It's more of an abandoned project that you guys kind of fixed or are working on fixing. But Nick knows the Cine dev pretty well. From what he said last night, he said they're legit people. So this is something that would be interesting also. But we can bring in people from outside, like this is a movement. Beyond Bitcoin is kind of a movement that essentially BitShares started, right? So just so everybody knows, we can really establish BitShares as one of the giants in this industry by making collaborative efforts with other people. So, Nick, if you ever are interested in working with Beyond Bitcoin and doing stuff like that, please let us know.
Yeah, so far I've just been reading up and listening before I really get involved with any speech or making any announcements or anything. But I think it's a direction we could definitely take. I'm strongly in collaboration of different groups for benefiting the entire crypto industry, especially as we move forward. I think if there's any coin left on their own, isn't really going to survive against these big collaborations.
And that's a good way of looking at it, man. That's kind of how we were considering things too. And I talked to Nick about something called the Bit Alliance, and that's not necessarily what we need to call it, but some people have not liked that, Joey.
No coin, damn it.
But I would like to explain something to you guys. Just everybody here, like, you guys are potentially really, really valuable to all of us. Like, all of us can pump so much value into this if we work together. And there are ways, essentially, of going out and fixing these coins that are kind of like stranded in the waters. And I was talking to Nick about it the other night too. Forgers and delegates are very similar. They play very similar roles. The only difference is the mechanism by which they are voted into power and how long, how the mechanism by which they're voted out of power. And really, they can use both the forgers and the delegates in an ecosystem can help fund infrastructure, can help fund a bunch of different things. So what I was proposing was the potential of actually getting delegates to start reaching out to different coin communities that they feel have really great followings or, a lot of potential, but just seem like they're not going to make it on their own, and kind of say, hey, I'm going to be a BitShares delegate, or I'm going to be a forger. I'm going to take some of the money that we're bringing in, and we're going to start filtering it into your ecosystem based on, maybe a vote on what kind of DAC you would like to have accept your token, and then share drop it, on the chain that whose technology actually does it for them, like 10% to the shareholders, but then save that coin. For instance, like Sexcoin. I always bring up Sexcoin because it's a really good example. Sexcoin is a potentially fabulous idea, right? The porn industry and the prostitution industry are huge. Arguably the second largest industry in the world. But the fact is they're sending all their money, like Dan says, to the power companies, right? And they're burning all this money. And instead of building infrastructure that accepts their coin, that drives demand for their coin, which increases liquidity, volume, and all the things that are necessary for a coin to become a robust ecosystem that reflects a lot of value. Instead of doing that, they're essentially burning it, right? So what we can do is just kind of show them what one delegate can do to help them with bounties and things like that. Or maybe a small team of delegates can do. Because if we can do that, or forgers, I don't mean to, cut out anybody. But if we can do that, we can essentially create a system where these coins that are mined, they now look at this like kind of like a rescue crew that came in with a better technology and said, hey, we're going to fix your coin. We're going to help you guys survive. We're going to help you not be bag holders. And if you want to gain loyalty on a platform, that's the way to do it, because Bitcoin has abandoned them, essentially. That's how they're going to feel, because the technology is not capable of doing what it needs to do on a large, expansive, broad way. So what do you guys think about that? The Bit Alliance.
Big task.
Well, it doesn't have to be a big task that we can chip away at it, right? Like climbing a mountain takes one step at a time. But it's not.
But like I said, getting a culture to change is maybe harder than just doing So in that sense, the competing idea, maybe it would be better than to create a competing product that has a working model instead of trying to fix something that's broken.
I think it's going to be kind of tough to explain to people just why the existing proof of work is broken to switch them over to another way of thinking.
Well, that's a good point, and the reason why I thought about this from this angle was when you see it's hard to explain it, right? It's hard to explain to somebody who's got a bunch of miners in their forums telling them, you know, stuff that's essentially good for the miner to tell them, right? And the incentives are a little bit off with mining, so they're not going to get that angle. The only way that I really see them getting the angle, well, that I see us kind of pushing them to get the angle a little bit, is imagine if you're one of those people in that community, you don't go anywhere else, and you think mining is all there is, but the coin just keeps dumping, you know, it keeps going down in price. And you don't really see a whole lot of value being pumped into the ecosystem. If somebody comes in or a crew of people come in and say, hey, we are the delegates that would normally be funding the infrastructure of this, or this, we can actually help fund you to build up and, you know, go turn into a Depot's coin eventually. Because that's kind of...
That's kind of the whole idea behind the whole delegate system, is that they're supposed to improve the whole industry, and that's why they're voted into the role they're given. But trying to solve everybody else's problem might be too big of a task. And maybe looking at the things, that's taking on too many roles at once, I think.
Well, final claim, you said if you look at SuperNet, it's different, but still the idea of consolidating to broken coins.
Thing is, for example, your SexCoin project, I haven't looked into it, but is it made similar to, for example, the music dark? If it's similar to that system, then it might work. So
well, I was actually...
These artists put their own fan coin and marketing themselves on the SexCoin market.
Well, that sounds good to me. I could make a lot of money there. No, I'm joking. But,
yeah, you can call the new... oh, no, maybe that's trademark. I thought Moulin Rouge or something.
Well, you know, and that's actually a really good historical connection.
Rouge. Moulin Rouge.
Well...
and then make a new deck from it.
You guys make a good point, though. Like, would it be better just to create your own DAC and essentially like share drop on the holders? But the thing for me is, the question that I ask is there's a point where we have to start looking at share dropping and the aspect of share dropping as a potential, like, there are good aspects to it as far as like for good PR. Like, for instance, if, you know, after Gox happened, if we would have share dropped something on all Bitcoin holders, you know, it would have been, it might not have made a lot of money, but it would have been a good PR move. On the other hand, there are certain times when it's not a good PR move. Like, say something awesome, Bitcoin does something really awesome, and we go in, and it'd be looked at as kind of like what do you want to call it? Not like a co-op of their system. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be careful with share dropping, but it can be very powerful.
Yeah, the thing with share dropping on coins that are not very well distributed is that you're not really getting in many new users. You're just playing favorites with the guys owning the biggest stake.
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to do, but I think we're not powerful enough and not far enough to be considering putting that much on our on our workload.
On our plate,
I don't know if we're able to do all that at the stage we're currently in.
Well, maybe it would be good to start out with one coin, and then what we could do is we could essentially hire somebody to do moderation stuff between the devs, kind of give the devs the ability to reach out to the community, and maybe we can essentially help them build up their community, and then because to me it seems technologically that Depos is one of the best ways of if not the best way. I think it is the best way right now, especially.
I have a couple ideas about how this might work. I've seen other models like this, so I don't know if you want to talk to me about them now or another time.
Well, I want to bring everybody into the conversation if possible with regard to
All right.
it.
Well, you can do what thing you want to do. You want to create an ecosystem where projects that might not have enough backing can get the backing they want in a distributed manner. So you have these, for example, look at, do you know Blender? Blender is an open source 3D graphics program. They're one of the pioneers. They're one of the couple of the pioneers for these how to do open source projects and stuff that people thought never was possible, like making movies and stuff like that. They're also trying out things like marketplaces, and that you can assemble a team and in a distributed manner. So maybe do something like that. So create, maybe beside Beyond Bitcoin, is Beyond Bitcoin a kind of an open platform for people to communicate with each other and do marketing, do journalism, and do presentations like this. Communities talk to each other. But maybe you can enhance that by making a kind of a marketplace where people from different things can come together, like developers and stuff like that. And then you can combine task forces to make a certain project happening.
That's actually brilliant, Joey.
But that needs, those are more like the kind of things I'm hoping that this stuff will bring in the future, but I don't think we're there yet. These are the things I'm interested in. And
well,
we needed the BitShares project to have it working.
I'll say this: we have, and this to me is great. Some people might not like it, and please feel free to let me know, let us know how you feel about it. I was interested in bringing NHC into talks personally because they're an NXT clone, and NXT is kind of like starting to, in my eyes, become looked at as kind of like a problematic kind of system that's now starting to. It's almost like it's so flawed from the beginning that there's a lot of problems, and it's also because it seems like it's toxic to a degree. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but NHZ seemed like it was really the distribution
is the word.
Well, but the question is, why did it lose momentum, right? And it's because of all these user-issued assets that ended up destroying people and destroying. Huh?
My theory is because they followed the cathedral model instead of the bazaar model.
I tend to agree with you.
And then the Pope left, and now the bishops are left fighting amongst each other.
Dang, Joey. Good way of saying it, man. The reason why I thought that it would be valuable, and Nick made a good point the other night, we're only as valuable as our communities. So the banners that we hold over our communities' heads psychologically they do hold a lot of significance to us, but it's sometimes a good idea to find ways of forming partnerships with technologies that might not necessarily be threatening competition, but might serve as competition that also helps us collaborate in certain ways too. You know what I'm saying? We all share similar problems in the crypto field, so why don't we all work on basic common solutions? And they were always they open gateways for BitShares DAX on their decentralized exchange. So they've already reached out kind of to say, hey, we're here and we're trying to help BitShares and ourselves, trying to form an alliance of sorts, or at least maybe we could say some form of symbiotic relationship. So
I have one goal maybe for your Bit Alliance concept. Think about when the printing press got the power to the people back in the Middle Ages and caused several century wars had to happen. I think that this financial freedom system might be actually very much comparable to the printing press, and because of the increased scale, the war might actually become bigger as well. So maybe the Bit Alliance could be something to help each other against the coming retaliation.
That's actually one of the main things that I'm thinking about. A lot of us.
Then it doesn't matter which project. Well, we're all having to fight a common incumbent adversary.
And we could disagree on who those incumbent adversaries are. However, I don't want to really bring that out into the open right now.
No, those are the guys who will come with the red flag laws. That's it's okay if you bring in the new invention that's better than everything else, as long as it doesn't go any faster than what's some person walking. And it's actually worse than all the current systems. We call them regulations to protect the people.
Yeah. Well, is anybody here working on a project that they would like to tell people here about or try to gain support for? Is anybody else a delegate here, or does anybody else have anything that they're any places where they would like to bring the conversation? I mean, this is I come in here and I talk, man. I'm sorry to everybody. You guys are all good listeners, but I would like to try to see, because you guys were talking really good, and I think I may have kind of unraveled that to a degree, talking about the Bit Alliance and all that stuff, but.
You serve an important role. The more stupid comments you make, the less embarrassed other people feel about talking.
I love you, Joey. I love you, man. Well, my take on it was this. All of you guys have so much value that nobody is aware of. And there are these talk shows that come out about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and it's great that we have that. It's great that people can do that, but it's hard for people who don't want to run their own show to get on and have their voice and their opinions heard, which are oftentimes very legitimate opinions. So this is there to intentionally kind of like change that format. So now anybody can open up their mouth and say something smart or dumb. And if we need to edit things out and you ask to edit something out, we can do that, all that stuff. But it's something that's supposed to kind of bring. This is going to become more of a town hall, and you guys will see. Whenever we have delegates, getting voted into power based on certain things, we're going to have committees that will probably form in something like the Mumble server that will all talk about the pluses and the minuses, and the biggest stakeholders are going to have the largest incentive to come in here. So that's kind of how I've constructed this.
Yeah, that's one of the things why Mumble is a better option. You can't just join and leave a Hangout and leave it up and running all the time. So I don't know of any other project that does that like Mumble can do that. You can it's like a chat with like IRC with voice.
Well, I do like what Murderistic said, and this is one of those things, right?
Yeah, but what I said, we can do it. We're gonna have this Mumble be the gathering ground, and here things are organized, and then we can do a countdown here for when we launch the Google Hangout. But have everything revolve around this Mumble session, so still people can pitch in or leave or do whatever they want, and not be left out.
That to me makes a lot of sense. What we could do is we could actually do what Murderistic is talking about. We could have the Google Hangouts. We could run the Mumble server at the same time, and people can choose which one they want to do.
Yeah, and just have the guy doing the recording to the Hangouts, the central person with a good internet connection. Instead of his face, put up his desktop with the IRC and with the Mumble client full screen.
Yeah, well, Murderistic, private Hangouts are great, and we can do that stuff. The private Hangouts would be a valuable thing. I prefer public too. There will be times when there's nothing wrong for sometimes us going behind the scenes and talking about something that we don't know is ready to be talked about in public yet. But generally speaking, I want to try to stay away from that if possible. But if you're willing to help us work on it, I'm willing to help you with it too.
And if there are any delegates in the room or people who want to run a delegate, let me know if there's any projects that you're wanting to work on, if you want to help our project, cough, cough. And we'll put you on a delegate slate, and we'll help advertise you guys to be part of the delegate ecosystem that's pushing us forward. And thank you, Murderistic, for your points.
Keep in mind though that the Google Hangout thing does require a little more preparation and coordination.
Yeah, it will be. I know the general. Like I put the Hangout together at one point in time, and that was great. What I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping that people will start wanting to do some of this stuff too, because it will become really big. This is right now. It's not that. It's not too difficult, so they can really understand and grasp this huge entity. This huge concept of DAX, right? This DAX go all over